Hi everyone, this is Norman Kochnick here for Eyes on Cricket, as you can see by both my hat, my jacket, and even near the Steve Ward picture there, you can see another hat. Can you see that, guys? You can see there's a hat there, there's the Steve Ward, there's the cup with Laurel and Hardy, which is, of course, Chris Vernon and me, with a labelling. An Aussie and a Pom talk all things cricket. That's in India. That'll happen before too long. And you've also got the Eyes on Cricket Cup. Certain mugs there. We've got more coming along. In fact, I came across some interesting things today about the World Test Championship. In fact, the merchandise from the ICC, and you may have seen it, I posted it on my so-called community tab or page within the YouTube channel, and we talked there about what was effectively the there were some caps for both the India-New Zealand World Test Championship. There was two caps, a white and a blue one. I think there's even a black version. I'm not sure about the cap, but there is a polo shirt, and both white, blue, and black. White and blue, and it's New Zealand and Indian logos on them. There's also a blue shirt, which is for the Indian team colours, and they're all available. I've actually went and ordered a few of them, a so-called pre-order. So I'm not sure whether you saw that. If you look at my community channel, guys, before we start, I thought I'd just broadcast. Of course, we're here today to talk to you about the significant second test in Edgbaston between England and New Zealand. There'll be quite a few changes to both sides. Well documented that Kane Williamson won't be there. It's likely that Trent Boult will be there. There'll be the young fellow called Young in place of Williamson, who's been batting very well in county cricket anyway, so he'll be a great asset to the side. Mitchell Santner's also broken a finger or thumb, I think it's a finger, and he's out for the match as well, which probably means he's out for the World Test Championship, which will probably lend itself to them having Boult, Southey, Jamieson, Wagner, and maybe someone else in the lineup. So it'll be straight Boult included in place of Santner, perhaps. So they'll retain all their bowlers. But yeah, okay, so we'll get to that in a minute. Siddharth's joining us. I think a few others are joining us. It's a matter of their availability. Chris Vernon, as you probably have seen, is floating around Scotland. He's playing cricket up there. He's in the Highlands. He's reached the highest point. Again, if you look at the community tab in my YouTube channel, you'll see regular photographs and updates of a whole bevy of things, including what I'm doing, what Chris is doing, what a whole lot of other people are doing, including players. It's all there. So it's just a matter of you going there. And I'll just quickly show you where that is. We're getting weather forecast there from Munchie as well. Munchie, hi Munchie, I'm glad you're here. We've got Hitesh Basi, we've got Amaresh Suresh, we've got Visanth Narain. A lot of people are here, so I'll go through that in a minute. Just wanted to show you the so-called community tab. Do you know what I'm talking about, guys? Tell me in the commentary whether you know what I'm talking about. And if you don't know, tell me you don't know, so I need to tell you. So on my YouTube channel, which is where you are now, you'll see that familiar page with David Byrne and crowd and man crowd. You'll see that there along the tabs there, you'll see there's a home tab, there's a views, playlists, and then community. So if you go across the top, you can see home, views, playlist, and then community. So I'll press on the community tab, and you get that. You'll get a whole list of things there, and you'll see some pictures there. You'll get a lot of things there. In fact, if we scroll high, there's an interview that I had with Len Pascoe. There's some more about the World Test Championship, some of the Australian fan reaction pages I've got. There's me with Nilakshi De Silva, who's the Sri Lankan cricketer. Hang on, sorry. There's me with Nilakshi De Silva and Rahman Ahmed. Rahman Ahmed's the captain of Bangladesh. Nilakshi De Silva plays for Sri Lanka. Scroll up, there's also more about my reaction photos. There's some shots about the tour. Then you've got Williamson, who's out. Then you've got Neil Harvey, the famous Neil Harvey, who was the only living man who was alive, who was played with or against or for Bradman. And you've got myself in a Sri Lankan, hang on, Let's just make this clear. Well, I think I've pressed the wrong button. So, yeah, so that community tab is there, and there's a whole host of things there that you can look at. Well, I'll bore you with it for a minute. I'll look down a bit further. There's some of the so-called World Tennis Championship gear. And so one of the tabs there will show you where to go. And you've got an interesting on there with Coley. And of course, that's his happy birthday. It's my birthday today, the 10th of June. So that's a happy birthday for me. So thank you for those who sent cake. In fact, nobody sent me any cake. Probably good for my waistline anyway. So we had there's me batting at the SCG. All right. So the match today between the second test between England and New Zealand starts at about just over an hour and a half or so away. We'll get tosses before too long. We'll get the teams as well. But there's one thing for sure, Kane Williamson won't be in the side. He has opted out. He's obviously gearing towards the so-called World Test Championship. They're going to have the likes of, I think it's Will Young as the player. Let me have a look at the name of it. Yeah, we've got quite a few. Well, Tom Latham's going to be the captain. Tom Latham will be captain in place of Kane Williamson. Tom Blundell's also in the squad. Whether he gets a go, I'm not sure. I don't think he will. Trent Bolt, there's Doug Bracewell playing. Devon Conway obviously is going to be there as well, opening with Latham. Colin de Grandhomme will be in the side likely. Jacob Duffy, well, he could be an inclusion. Or I would argue probably Matt Henry probably looks like he may be an inclusion. But Kyle Jamieson, you've got Henry Nichols, we know of. Ajaz Patel, who's the spinner, and Russian Ravindra could also be in there, but Sandler's definitely out. Southie, of course, Russell Taylor, Neil Wagner. Will Young will probably bat at number 3, so you'll have the likelihood of Latham as captain opening up with Devon Conway, and then Will Young will bat at 3, and then you'll have Ross Taylor at 4, and then Henry Nichols at 5, and a very similar, I think, and you'll probably see Watley coming shortly after that, and then you'll have the usual suspects, but probably you'll have Wagner, Southey, and Bolt in place with Jamieson, and that may be it actually in terms of the bowling. We'll see how it goes. So we'll go through that side in a minute in more detail when we get Siddharth online. Siddharth will also talk about the Indian scenarios there and a fair few changes. Well, I wouldn't say changes, but some deliberations on who will play as well. So the match is in Edgbaston, not Lords, and Munchie is online. And in fact, there is a photo of Munchie. Did you know that I put your photo with a certain famous cricketer on my community page? Munchie, tell me whether you knew. Have you actually bothered to look? There's a very fresh-looking Aparna Saini. She's there. You can see her there. She's very, very much refreshed. If you scroll further down, you'll eventually come across this photo, and I'll just show it to you. A bit further down, it's quite a way down, but it's there. It's definitely there. Munchie, it's up to you to find it, but Munchie's photo is there. I've definitely put it on there. There's Chris Vernon in the Highlands of Scotland. Hang on, let me get this right. Chris Vernon in the Highlands of Scotland. Here we are. Does that look familiar, Munchie? That's on my community tab on the YouTube page. Picture of Munchie with none other than Sir Vivian Richards. All right, let's have a look now. So, Munchie, you go and have a look at that. I want you to tell me what you think. So, Munchie has written the morning weather report. It looks like the test will look like to be a dry 5 days of test. Very low chance of rain, which is fantastic. Cloudy but warm. Somewhat muggy for the first couple of days, but no rain. Then sun for the last 3 days. Temperatures around 20 to 26 degrees. Sounds like perfect cricketer conditions to me. If Narain Siddharth is coming, he's coming about another 15 minutes. He's joining us. He's a bit busy with his work, but he's able to come through. So Munchie's trying to defend his looks now. Let's just see whether it's worth defending. There we are. There's Munchie trying to defend his looks. What do you reckon, guys? I think Munchie looks okay. That's Munchie, everyone. If you don't know, that's not Munchie in the black jacket. That's actually Viv Richards, and that's Munchie on the side there. All right. Hitesh Bussey doesn't want a dull draw. That's not going to happen. We're 5 days of clear weather. Very, very unlikely that we'll have any form of dull game. Bashan Jungle is also on us. So let's just go through the. We'll talk a bit more. I guess some of your idea. So, yeah, the elbow of Kane Williamson is obviously he claims to be needing to be rested. I'll tell you what, there isn't a lot of time between this match and the next match anyway, because the actual World Test Championship starts on the 18th of June. Today being the 10th of June, my birthday. I don't forget that date too often. That's a Thursday, so it'll be Friday week that the World Test Championship will start. And anyone that hasn't wished me a happy birthday on my social media pages, I'm going to be looking you up. No, I'm just joking. So New Zealand will bat first and they'll score between 280 and 350, Hitesh Bussey saying. Well, you didn't want to. I'll tell you what, Tom Latham's got a lot to be happy about and to be able to play for. He's captaining his country in place of Kane Williams, which is a great honour. Will Young will be certainly there to impress. He's done that all season in the so-called county system. Been batting particularly well. In fact, he was almost forcing his way into the match for today. Last game. Didn't quite get there, but he certainly will have a lot to show today. Thank you, Ashish. Happy birthday wishes. Will Kane Wilson play in the World Test Championship final? There's little doubt that he will. Of course he's going to play. So I tell you what, there's an elbow soreness going through the camp. Maybe it's contagious. He got Jofra Archer having been operated on his elbow, a chronic elbow injury, which will probably lead him to not play for the rest of the season. And it's quite serious, the rest of the entire season. And thank you, by the way. I have put together an Australian fans reaction video, and in the first week of its production, or its release, let's call it, first week, 120,000 views, some 7,500 likes, and some 1,000 plus comments, and I'm very proud of that. And we had some great people involved, and I'm going to do a lot more of that. I'm going to get more reactions of people in Australia as to how they see the season panning out, which is always interesting. I think it's interesting. You get the raw emotion of people and their understanding of cricket, which is always something to enjoy. So let's have a look here. Let's have a little quick look, and I'm just looking at the scenario. It's pretty good. So, all right. So Ollie Pope, Ashish is saying that Pope looks more and more like a domestic league champion player, finding it difficult to transform himself into national level. Yeah, it's quite a few actually. It's quite a few. So much. Yes, you say yes. I saw it to the community page photo. You saw it. Did you scroll through? Well, that's good. Okay, so yeah, Ollie Pope, Dan Lawrence simply batted okay in the second innings there. Rory Burns is quality; he's worth being there. But yeah, there's a lot of question marks over the England side. So they're going to be tested with India coming out as well. So it'll be very interesting. So Sudesh Patel, the injury update to Kane Williamson is this: he has an elbow soreness, not a serious injury, but it's a form of soreness, and he's simply resting, which is fair enough. Okay. So Chaitanya Kulkarni has said, hello, Norman Sir. Can you tell me why everyone is giving New Zealand an edge over India in the WTC final and compare both teams' bowling attacks and your pick? We'll do that today and certainly over the next few days as well. Look, the more you say that, the more, not me, you specifically, but we collectively say that New Zealand have got the wood on India based on playing 2 test matches, getting the runs on the board, so to speak, makes me even think more that it won't happen because India are going to be super duper fresh, rested, mentally probably very alert, very much wanting to show their wares. Admittedly, they don't normally start any series well. Well, this is not a series, is it? This is just one match. So they're going to put their best foot forward immediately. Pujara will be his element. The weather hopefully is as good as it is for this match down there, which will only mean a result. New Zealand choke in big matches. I'm afraid to say this is a ICC final. No no shadow of a doubt, this is an actual World Test Championship final. So the pressure is really on from the get-go, so to speak. So my pick still, my heart says India, my head says New Zealand, but I think the heart may win over the head. We'll wait and see. The bowling attacks, well, I mean, New Zealand's are very potent. We've seen Tim Southey bowled fantastically. We've got a 6-wicket haul in one of the innings, the first innings, in fact, of the Test match in the first at Lords. You also have Trent Bowles, depending on how well he's rested, will also be very fresh and bowls capably in these conditions. Jamieson was perhaps a little bit underwhelming, but yeah, he's still there. And if Matt Henry comes in, Mitchell Santner's injured, and I dare say they're not going to bowl spinner. They may not go in for any spinners. Interestingly enough, England didn't go for any spinners when they played, which must be a sign to both New Zealand and India what should be happening on these pitches. There was no recognised spin bowler in the England lineup. There may well be today, we're not sure. They had Joe Root as the spinner, and it didn't really work. But you would argue that they will probably all go for that all-pace attack. India, of course, will have... Again, we're leaning towards probably Ashwin, and Jadeja's there as well. Really, they're probably going to play both. I don't know. I'm saying they will, but it's going to be an interesting dilemma to have whether they bring in 4 paces, that is Bumrah, Ishant Sharma, Shami, and Siraj, and leave out a spinner or not, is the question. So Bushan, Jang, I'm loving the icon. What's your icon? I can't. So what is the icon? I can't read it. Nobody can be told. So I'm calling it 60-40. This is Munchie. I'm calling it 60-40. Thank you, Sirari guys. You said, "Oh, happy birthday." I like that. But you said that on my private page as well. So Munchie's calling it a 60-40 to New Zealand. A proper match practice versus inter-squad process is key. Yeah, I don't know whether any practice is going to be enough or not enough, really. It'll be up to the way they should be capable players that come along and really play well. AP Gunner is saying, really hope New Zealand thrash India and the World Test Championship. Finally can't stand all these confidence from these. Oh, that's a bit of a heavy comment from AP Gunner. It's confidence, but confidence deservedly so, because they've been doing it really very well. It's incredibly interesting because you have New Zealand have not won a championship of this nature before. India hasn't won for some time. If India wins, it'll be great for world cricket. For New Zealand, if they win, it'll be great for world cricket. It's kind of nice not to have Australia and England involved because they're traditionally ones that you would argue are involved. So, yes. Please use burn all. Okay. So, Manish Yadav is going 55-45 in favour of India, whereas Munchie said 60-40. What did you say? 60-40. Where was it? I've got it back up there. 60-40 in favour of New Zealand. I would argue it's 50-50, really. And it could go either way to bring up the 60-40 result for either side. I think it's going to be extremely exciting. We mustn't underplay the fact that this is a final of finals. It's the highest echelon of cricket in the world, as far as I'm concerned. You have IPLs, you have BBLs, you have all sorts of other BLs, so to speak. You have World Cups, both 50 over and 20 over, which have been the pinnacles. Quite frankly, the World Cup 50 over has been a pinnacle for some time because of its World Cup event style. But this should be given the highest of all status, to be the best test team in the world, regardless of how they got there, regardless of point systems and what have you that we're all been arguing about at the moment, regardless of all that. At this point in time, this is the way they qualified. These two teams have qualified for those levels of first and second, the world, and the winner takes all and becomes the first ICC World Test Championship winner in 2021, and that'll go down in history. Hence why I bought the cricket gear. I think that the jackets and tops and shirts and hats will be invaluable because they'll be the first. So I'd recommend we get them, and I might try and help you organise that. There is a website location for it. I think again, everything's on my so-called community page or community tab in the YouTube channel. You can go there and look at them. Look at it regularly. I'm trying to make that a go-to place to look at things on a regular basis. So that's where we're looking at doing. So yeah, so revenge time for both the 2019 semi-finals for India. You would argue revenge time could also be deemed to be the situation also for India, for New Zealand as well, for having lost the World Cup. There's a few. They're both in an incredibly, dynamic situation. So Bushan is a Chelsea fan, like Debash is not. Okay, guys, let's settle down with your Chelsea. Okay, well, acknowledge that there's Chelsea's, there's Manchester United's, there's Leicester City's, all in England and soccer, and you have various NFL teams, both in gridiron. Then you've got the baseball, you've got the basketball in America, but you've also got in Australia the National Rugby League, as in Rugby League, NRL, and you have what team is it? Who can write the quickest to tell me who the team that I'm about to talk about? Again, Chelsea's, you've got Manchester United, Manchester United, you've got Manchester City, you've got the Leicester Cities, you've got whomever, you've got the Chicago Bulls and the Dallas Cowboys for other sports in America. You've got, the LA Galaxy, I think was a soccer side. You had, the teams in Brazil, but in Australia we have the National Rugby League. We've also have the Australian Football League, which is Aussie rules, which is a different sport. But in terms of rugby league, yes, Munchie's got it. The team that I want to talk about is, well, not the Bunnies, but the Rabbitohs, and they're my team, and they're running fourth at the moment. There was a state of origin battle between New South Wales and Queensland, which is a big grudge thing for many, many years now. New South Wales won 50 points to 6 over Queensland, which was very good. But my South Sydney Rabbitohs, sometimes called the Bunnies or the Rabbitohs, they actually are running fourth at the moment. And they're playing Newcastle Knights, not unlike Kolkata Knight Riders, Newcastle Knights. So we've got a guest joining us now. Siddharth's here, and he's a touch early.
Hi, Norman.
How
Happy
are you?
birthday.
Thank you. I'm looking younger. I've shaven, so
Absolutely.
That's my attempt to look younger.
Absolutely. 1 minute, please. Just hold on.
No worries.
Yeah. Shutting down the door.
So we've got a few people coming a bit later, but it's a difficult time slot for most people in the world because it's time to work, actually, not to watch cricket. For me, it's 6 p.m. is probably a good time. But we were talking at length about some of the inclusions and exclusions from this Test match and further afield to the World Test Championship. Did you see the merchandise coming out from the ICC for the World Test Championship? Did you see that?
Yeah, very good. I mean, it's quite innovative in its own way. I think the ICC are going one notch ahead when it comes to the merchandising part of it.
Absolutely. To me, it'll become a collector's item.
Indeed, it should be.
Because it's the inaugural Test series, I said championship, I should say, not series. We're going to look back in 20 years' time when we're in our wheelchairs and our bodies hunched over and looking at the ground rather than up. The reality will be that that'll be a significant milestone. It really will be. And I think India has a huge opportunity to put a mass, as we've spoken earlier about, the way the West Indies did with the 50 over World Cup when they won 75 and 79, the way they put a stamp on that forever. I looked at a video of Chris Gale the other day, a young Chris Gale. Geez, he was incredible. He really was incredible.
Indeed.
At Test cricket, he was unstoppable. It wasn't. We always tag him as a short form player, but his batting skills, his long batting skills to bat and get double hundreds and triple hundreds. I tell you what, I think we really have underrated Chris Gale in his Test career. We really have. If you go back and look at his scoring shots, they were magnificent drives. They weren't just big hoiks. There was some magnificent driving, a lot of skill.
Indeed.
And I think
we've criminally underrated Chris Gale. I mean, in the quest for the Fab Four, I mean, even in the Tendulkar era, even in the Ganguly era, we did look at Gale's contribution. He was the first among those people who hit 2 triple tons. It's
Exactly.
not a mean feat at all. And even if you look at his jersey number in the IPL or anything, it's 333. That knock he made against Sri Lanka. So in a way, he was paying tribute to Test cricket. Only thing is, we didn't look beyond the IPL in that sense.
Yeah, he scored, and it was also a magnificent double hundred against South Africa. Have you seen the video of that game?
Yep.
Oh, his batting stance was a lot more closed. It wasn't as open, I noticed, which maybe is an adaptation to the short form. He was more traditional in his batting stance. But when he drove the ball, it was a traceable.
Those inside-out covers. I mean, I remember one knock, I think he hit 170 balls, if I'm not mistaken, against South Africa. That included Pollock, that included Encini, that included, I think, Peterson, I suppose.
Was Steyn as well?
No, I think this was 2003-04. Steyn made it in 2006-07.
Right.
But that inside-out drive that he made of Encini was fantastic. I think it was Cape Town, if I'm not mistaken. It happened in Cape Town.
But I was blown away because I guess we only ever think of his short form game because he's been playing that for so long. And they gave him a rather cruel end to his Test career, and he went out for a while, and there was a bit of backlash. They probably missed out on 2,000 or 3,000 Test runs that he could have got, and he still got. What did he get? 7,000? Did he get 7,000? I think he got 7,000.
7,000 more.
Pretty amazing.
But I would look at the more relevant statistic in that he's just 2 away from becoming. If he had played a Test match or so, he was 2 away from becoming the only guy to hit 100 sixes in all 3 formats. Even McCullum didn't achieve that. McCullum hit only 91 sixes in T20s. But Gale has done it all. Plus, he's a T20 freak, but he's also a Test and ODI great also. And more so, I remember Gale with the ball. He defended 4 runs, I think, against England in 2000 at Trent Bridge. He just gave away 2 and took 3 wickets.
Phenomenal. Severely underrated.
Criminally underrated.
And we always get annoyed that he's still playing at over 40. Well, I'm afraid he's still got it.
Yeah.
He wants to. When he plays his shots, they stay here.
I mean, I've got a problem with people saying, "Oh, 40, you're not allowing the youngsters." I mean, Tendulkar, even at the age of 40, hit 70s and 80s. A sportsman should be given the right of when he should retire. It's his right because he still feels, even at 42, 43, even Misbah and Yunus, even in their last series when they were 40, they helped them win a series in West Indies. So why not?
And also, I always call him Johanna, which is not his name that we would go by. He finished way too early. He was he was probably, I'm going to argue that he was the best ever Pakistani batsman.
I mean, silken. I mean, that elegance that he had. I mean, technically not sound, but once he drove, not a better sight in world cricket. I mean, the drives, the high backlift. I mean, you would think that he may get bowled by the fuller length of the Yorker. But no, a drive. Just that. And that knock that he made against Australia in Melbourne, Boxing Day, 2004. Brilliant. He made Shane Warne look mortal. When Pakistan had struggled before that, he was hitting 6s and 4s at will of Warne.
Well, he was right up there. Okay, there's a comment that's coming through, and about this whole discussion of the ICC statement on India, the Test series win against Australia being the ultimate Test series ever. Now, look, it certainly was one for the ages. There's no doubt about that. But to come out and say such a statement, I don't know why there's a need to say this. I'm not saying it shouldn't be classified very highly. I'm not degrading it. It was a fantastic series. It was right up. It left Australians still talking about it. But I actually think it's a bit strange why you have to tag it like that, because how far back are we going to go? Because the Tide Test was an amazing game in that series in Australia. There was plenty of great, plenty of incredible matches. Not that I'm trying to outdo this Test series, but I don't know what the significance of saying that was. I don't know what's
but Norman, I have a huge problem with the sample size of the series that were collected. 80% of them involved India. So obviously one of the India-Australia series was anyway going to become the ultimate Test series anyways. This series was there. The 2001 series was there. I mean, the problem with pigeonholing this is you're actually degrading the other series that happened.
Absolutely.
Necessarily need not be India. I mean, can you believe it? The Australia versus England 2005 Ashes. It changed world cricket forever. Had Australia won that, England would have said, let's just chuck it. We'll continue suffering. But they won in 2005. Cricket changed. That was the first crack in the armor of the Aussies. I mean, we never thought that the Aussies could be beaten at that time, but that was the first crack. That reverse swing, there was equal contest between bat and ball. Where is that series?
Yeah. And it was amazing how Jones bowled so well in that series, but we never saw him again. We never saw him again.
I know that it was really terrible. I mean, that spell, the ultimate reverse swing bowler. If I had missed out on Waqar, if I had missed out on Wasim, I had a glimpse of how they would be with Jones bowling. Banana reverse swing. Banana. And they would wipe the tail out totally. Wipe the tail out.
He and Flintoff. Munchie's mentioned the 81 Ashes and the involvement of both, and then the way he turned things around was quite phenomenal. And Flintoff,
it's not there. Yeah, it's not there. I mean, I would even include the 1986 tie test, that series 0-0, but still, it was a tie test. It led to Alan Border's Australia becoming the #1 ranked side in the world at that time. You're missing out on even, I would say, the 2009 series between New Zealand and Pakistan. Very, very competitive. And why? It was the first series to have official DRS. Very significant milestone. Not there. None from the Sri Lankan side, none from the West Indies side. Pakistan, the India match of 1999 was included, but none after that. So I have a huge problem with the ICC sampling, that it was 80% or 90% more favored to India. So obviously one of the India series had to become the ultimate series. But I think it's not a good move. I would have looked at significance. 56 Ashes, Lakers 19 for 90. How big was that? 1968 Ashes, Underwood bowled Australia out with only 5 minutes left. And the beauty of that series was, when it poured, the fields were not covered at that time. The crowd came in, helped the ground staff to mop it up, and Underwood managed to make it 2-2. Where is that series? Nowhere.
But I mean, if even take it to one side, what games they selected, why do we need to talk in these terms? Because the game was so fresh, and only having finished some 6 months ago, a series, you can't talk in terms of being in that category. Not because we're degrading, it's just we haven't lived the test of time with it. It's really it's going to be interesting to see more how they develop it now into the future.
Maybe the ICC, what they might have done is, do not take the results of these 5 years. Take it from maybe 2015 to 1985. Or maybe 1975, a 40-year time lapse. Choose the best series in that. You would have given every single nation their due. I mean, Sri Lanka's win in New Zealand 1994, Chaminda Was, what a spell that was. 95 Sri Lanka, I would add, more for the Murli fiasco. That changed cricket. That changed chucking. That changed everything.
Yeah.
You would have had a 40-year time period at that time. But I don't know what the ICC were thinking. Maybe to just cater to the Indian market, perhaps, they did this.
Perhaps. I mean, if you take a step back, even we both have seen very little footage of the Bradman era. And look, it wasn't a one-sided set of series either. It was Bradman against some very good English players, some very, very good English batsmen.
I mean, if I have to look at the ultimate series, just picture this scenario, Norman. Australia is down 0-2 in the 5-match Ashes. In a very, very wet Melbourne deck, Bradman decides, I'll flip the batting order. The wicket eases out. Australia win. They win the series 3-2, 1936-37. It has never happened in the history of cricket after that. Can't that be called the ultimate test series? From 2-0 down, you flip the batting order to ensure that we are safe, and then you win at 3-2. Right. It had everything, but again, we don't have footage, unfortunately, of that series. It must have been an absolute classic, 1936-37.
So are we talking about this recent series because of the point that Ashes is making here about the number of injuries and weakened squads? Look, that's its story in itself. Coming back from adversity, like even in a game of rugby or any other sport you mentioned, when they're all out and about and they're injured, they're down their last numbers and they get up with victory, that is very special. That's more about a teams that against adversity. Whether that classifies to be the best series ever because of that is another question. I would argue, if I'm being really honest with you, I thought Australia played pretty poorly. Not that doesn't imply that India were allowed to win, no, but Australia missed many opportunities where they could have easily won the test in Sydney, which would have changed things.
Had Tim Payne taken those catches, they would have won.
Exactly.
Simple.
Yeah, and we may be looking at a different dynamic for the last match. But yeah, look, the reality is it's right up there. It's top 10 without a doubt. You would argue potentially top 5, but any higher, why are we talking at this stage like that? I don't think it's going to go down. Certainly the best series, I would argue, very close to this series that India's been involved with in my living memory against Australia, especially in Australia, no doubt. But it's more a matter of let's judge it over a bit more time before we start saying such superlatives. Not that it doesn't deserve it, but
because again, it is not to undermine that series was not great. It was a great series, but I would have rather said, I mean, even for India, they missed one very important series in that 1977-78. First time India won in Australia. I mean, Australia won the first 2 tests. India bounced back by winning 2, and they were just 47 runs away from chasing 490. That was a series-defining win for India. I mean, win for Australia. Why? For Australia, if I may add in that one comment, they said with so many injuries to squads, there was no Australian team in 1977-78. Everybody had gone to World Series cricket.
Correct.
And who came to captain them? 41-year-old Bob Simpson.
Amazing.
But Simpson led from the front. I mean, even at 41, he had such amazing skill against spin. Look at how he tackled Beatty. It was a divine thing. Unfortunately, again, no footage. But that series finds no mention.
Yeah.
1977-78. And Australia were decimated, but yet the resilience shown by the Australians is so great, you still won.
That's true. And look, and we are only talking about Test cricket here. We're not talking about other forms. And look, a country like Sri Lanka will always hang their hat on the 96 World Cup, regardless of Test or one-day cricket. But then the innings where they scored 985 goes down in living history of an amazing innings, probably never to be surpassed in terms of
but maybe the quality of cricket that was at show. I mean, it was a very, you may say, it didn't favor the bowlers that much. It was a flat deck. The bowlers were deflated. What would you do? I guess that wouldn't come as a classification. But yeah, I mean, Ashish has pointed out one very important. The Lara series versus West Indies in '99. Of course, that was a classic. It took all of the genius of Brian Lara to thwart the Aussies. Otherwise, you were simply the best team at that time, period.
And going back to, again, someone who's been underrated, talking about Chris Gale, even though Brian Lara is lauded as being one of the best, I still think he's underrated somewhat.
Yeah. Gale is criminally underrated, yes.
It annoys me. It really does, because they look at his party lifestyle. If they go back to that innings I saw today against South Africa, I was shocked. His batting technique was superb. His shot selections were magnificent. He had this very serious intent on his face. And that gets scary because he's normally not like that. He's normally devil may care. But when he's like that, oh, God. I mean, he and Kevin Peterson are 2 players that, again, probably are both underrated. Kevin Peterson was always talking about his shenanigans more than his play. But he was phenomenal.
A true match winner. A true match winner.
That's the key words. A match winner overrides anyone that's scored 1 billion runs or taken 1 billion wickets. If they can't win matches, they're not worthy of that title. I also looked at Jimmy Anderson today bowling against the best batters in the world. That was sensational. Have you seen that video? Well, I think it's a Lord's created video where they show, or the ECB may have produced it, where they show 20 wickets that Jimmy Anderson took against the best batters. Wickets against Umla,
Yeah.
Harder. It was just phenomenal bowling. But I'm tainted about Jimmy Anderson because I always remember the time when he bowled to Hayden and Langer. I think it was in Australia, and he got absolutely smashed. I thought he was a crap bowler, to be honest, because Langer and Hayden were both left-handers. They ate him for breakfast. It was an amazingly demoralising thing for Jimmy Anderson.
But again, that great Australian team was great because they could do anything. They made even good bowlers look foolish.
Yeah.
So I guess that is what made Anderson so great, because you were faced up with two legends like Hayden and Langer. Brilliant. I mean, you couldn't find a better opening combination than.
No, they were pretty awesome, weren't they? Okay. Now, Music Harmony, who has been with us forever, and he's always very insightful, talks in terms of everyone from the England side, except for Sam Curran, has tweeted something racist or inappropriate, which makes the suspension of Robinson look worse. I have to agree here. If we were to go back, Siddharth, on your post when you were younger, I'm being flippant now, on my post, I probably said something rather stupid, like I've joked with a girl about something and said, whatever, and then I've known the girl well enough, and when you air it publicly, it's not her and I that we're worried about, it's people outside of that circle that see that. We go back to Gone with the Wind, the bloody movie from the 19-year dot, and there was some compromising situation where a girl was forced to kiss a guy, and then banned that section of the movie. I mean, how bloody ridiculous. How ridiculous. Although this is slightly different to that, I still think it's ridiculous. I mean,
I guess now what has happened is, Norman, I think we have to go back to the time. I think all this has come up into the point that due to Black Lives Matter, when BLM happened, a lot of these things came into the spotlight, which were then considered to be very normal to the psychic thing here. The normal side of things was, okay, you could have seen Robinson's tweets as possibly dark humor or maybe sarcasm, to that matter. I mean, you have to be either downright stupid to call every Muslim something of that kind. I mean, Dean Jones meant it in a different way when he called Amla a terrorist, but it became a big issue at that time, because even Amla, I mean, I don't know what is it with Hashim Amla. David Warner and Joe Root were caught up in that tussle because of apparently mocking Hashim Amla. What was the connection there? I just don't get it. But yeah, Black Lives Matter has played a huge role in this, which is why, and on top of that, in many Asian countries, LGBTQ laws are now becoming valid. It's no longer illegal. So perhaps this revisionism that is coming about is because of that. Sure, we have all done it. We have all been so stupid and flippant on social media. That's the nature of the medium. That's how it is. People get trolled for opinions. You say something about, say, if Steve Smith hits 100, but then you say, oh, Steve Smith is crass, he's just a very lucky cricketer. You'll get a lot of trolling. That is the nature of the medium. So, yes, you can argue about why you have to do this now. I mean, but I suppose maybe better late than never. But yeah, it's an overreaction. You can't suspend Robinson for what he did 8-9 years ago. Unless, of course, it's a murder case, then maybe you can perhaps try. But sorry, not for this, when he's already apologized.
I actually think by bringing it,
he has
apologized. I'm more thinking about the fact that when you raise the head of this, the ugly head of this 8 years later, all you're doing is bringing unnecessary attention to it. Sometimes ignorance is not bliss, ignorance is appropriate. And that means to let it go. It's not current. I mean, look, in Australia, I'll give you an example. Where Dave Warner lives, where he was brought up, was Matraville. I live not with Coogee, Maroubra, Matraville, Little Bay. These are areas near me. And then the Matraville, some parts of Maroubra, Little Bay, there's a lot of housing commission, which means people who are rather poor, houses supplemented by the government. And in fact, Dave Warner was brought up in such a house. Now, nothing against that, admirable for many reasons. And, there's no issue with any of that. But the problem is that over time, they had a fairly white neighbourhood. Then you had an influx of, well, specifically Aboriginals, which of darker colour, which are native to the area of La Perouse, which is not very far away. There's a lot of ill will with race there that was inherent. Not unlike it, well, not Alabama, but there's a bit of comparison you can argue to that. Again, what's happening in South Africa is another level even above that. We have to take into account the neighbourhoods these people were brought up in. Not that it's acceptable, but we have to understand there's certain terms flew around there that were deemed to be used, but not necessarily as racist as it may come across. Anyway, I think we're going to draw the line around the world now with this. It's been aired. Are we going to uncover every single England player now, including Joe Root, including Sam Curran, or whoever the other blokes are? I mean, and I think Butler's also included. I mean, we're going to dissect it. We'll be here for a month of Sundays and get nowhere. We're best leaving it. Don't you agree?
Yes, absolutely. But again, can you afford to ignore racism, Norman, at any point in time?
Yeah. No means by saying ignore racism. I'm saying let's start from this point onwards now, and let's be wary of what happens from now on, because
I think every board in conjunction with the ICC now will have to come up with strict player guidelines even for social media now, because it's only through social media that these guys can connect with the public in a way. If you bring up these kind of before that, players need to be trained and given a workshop on different cultures that is there. Morgan and Butler have been accused of mocking the Indian language the way how we speak English. Maybe you can take it to the pinch of salt, saying they didn't mean it. But again, there is an uproar in India for that. And as you know, Norman, racism is a very convenient thing in India. We have our own inherent racist traits. But when somebody from the outside does it, we raise a big hue and cry. That is how it is. I mean, the whole Monkeygate scandal, if I have to look at it, it began in India. It did not begin in Sydney in 2008. It began in India in that ODI series. Simons was targeted. You go to Mumbai, you go to these places, they are racist. The fans can become racist. There's no denying that. But again, when someone else does it, it happens. We go into this thing. But we can mock the Australian thing, we can mock the American thing in our call centers and do that and say, oh, we are just doing our job. That's where the problem lies. That's the problem.
Oh, well said. No, very well said. I'm so, what's the word for it? So multicultural in my life. Having been married to a Sri Lankan, having an immense amount of friends in India, friends in South Africa, both black and white, American friends, black and white. I'm going to use the word black and white because there's nothing offensive about either of those words. Australians, original descent. I have such a multicultural nature about me. But I do know one thing. You should still be able to have a little bit of fun with people in the right means. But that's the danger. What you and I appear to think is funny between you and I, it needs someone remotely outside to break it down. And even the male-female culture, which I'm afraid is very, as you know, is very evident in countries in the subcontinent. Women are simply not treated as well as they should be.
Big time, big issue.
I'm talking about, I'm not India, I'm talking about generally.
The thing is, Norman, our tolerance levels have gone down. What might have been considered funny a couple of years ago is no longer funny anymore.
That's right.
I can make maybe 15, 20 years ago, I mean, look at the opposition that we have had to Tom and Jerry cartoons in India. Tom and Jerry. But there are a lot of stereotypes within that. It normalizes violence. It doesn't show the black community in good stead. No. But for 15 to 20 years, kids were exposed to that. And they laughed it. And they laughed and they had fun. But now suddenly it's no longer there. So many caricatures and the tolerance level has gone down to such an extent. If I just, for example, Anil Kumble finds the B word very offensive and racist. He says, I will raise a hue and cry about it. Different situations merit different behaviors. That's probably the case that we are in now. If I say the Aussies, oh, they are all cheats, it's offensive. Not all are cheats, but the perception is built. That's the problem.
Yeah. Probably the worst example we've got, I'm afraid to say, is South Africa. We all, people from India, from Australia, from England, kind of stay very much away from the South African situation because it's such a sore point in the world, having gone through apartheid, what they did do, and that was very, very bad, extremely bad. Now, the shoe's on the other foot somewhat, but in some ways you would argue it's justified, in some ways you argue it's not. But you and I, from India and Australia, amongst you in England or someone in wherever, really are not positioned to be able to talk about that without any authority, without any knowledge. We are not South African. We're not living in South Africa. The internalization of their problem is there. It's a very much internal problem. I'm very sad to see not their best side of the field, regardless of race, and that's the problem. I just want the best players in the field.
This is the correction. Like I said, the correction 8-9 years ago wouldn't have been much of a difference. But then South Africa should have let bygones be bygones in 1994. But even today, there is a correction. There is a revision that is happening through their culture. And it reflects even in the cricket team. I mean, who can forget 2015 ICC World Cup semi-final versus New Zealand? It made no sense to bring in a half-fit Vernon Philander in place of Kyle Abbott, who was the best death overs bowler, may I add, irrespective of color. He was the best death bowler for the side. It made no sense.
Yeah.
But the quota thing, that's the biggest thing.
You can't put a number on it. You can't put a quota. It's just ridiculous. I mean, you could argue that in the long-term future of South African cricket, you would find there'll be a lot more native Africans in the team, if I want to use that term, because of the physicality, not unlike the West Indies. You would expect them to have incredible bowlers. It should be the future because that population shows that fact. But when it's ready, when they're good enough, when they're skilled enough, not just based on a quota, that's just dumb.
I mean, England, if you have to just add to that, England is a rainbow nation, if I have to look at it. So many players came from the Caribbean to ply their trade and they represented England. So many from Zimbabwe, so many from South Africa, so many from India, so many from Pakistan, Bangladesh, even New Zealand have gone on to play for England. I mean, had Kolpak not stopped, we would have seen a further influx of South Africans into the English county system. I mean, you look at so many players from the West Indies who've done well for England. Gladstone Small, Chris Lewis, Phil DeFreitas. From India, I mean, from Pakistan, Sajid Mahmood. From Bangladesh, Adil Rashid, all these guys. From Australia even, I mean, there was one or two representations, but they didn't do that well. From New Zealand, Ben Stokes, Andrew Caddick. Peterson, Strauss, Pryor, Trott, all were from South Africa. So, in a way, I will just say this, that many nations have got a long way to go in emulating England for the way how they have represented the country.
Well, let's start with Australia. I'm afraid if you look at the Australian team, other than Usman Khawaja, honestly, we've got Gurinder Sindhu's floated around a little bit. Even Moses Enriques, you could argue, is a non-Australian from heritage. But the current crop, you've got Jason Sangha and Tanveer Sangha. They could well be, one will be, or in fact should be, captain of Australia at some stage. On his under-19 captaincy record for Australia, his performances in state level in both short and long form of the game, he didn't quite do well in the final of the Sheffield Shield, but he scored centuries against almost every country. He should be in the side. When he is, he should be captain. The next credentialed captain of Australia should be Jason Sangha.
Indeed.
There's no one in the current crop. There's no one who's as good a captain as him. And as long as his batting keeps up, he will be the next Australian captain. And we gave him a go as under-19 captain. So that should be a telltale sign, shouldn't it, really? I mean, Prithvi Shaw was captain. He's not quite there yet, but he will be. You'd have to argue. Yes. He will be.
Even Jason Gillespie. I heard Jason Gillespie was an Aboriginal, wasn't he?
Yeah, certainly is part Aboriginal. Absolutely.
Yeah. But Australia, even if you saw the series against India during the limited overs, they acknowledged the roots, the design of the uniform represented the very core of indigenous Australia, if I have to look at it.
That's a very good thing. I'm not knocking it, but I just have this little bit of lingering doubt of whether there's an element of tokenism on occasions as well, whether we're doing it out of a routine rather than we've got a long way to go there still, I tell you.
Yeah.
And again, look at the last names of the Australian men's team: Smith, Warner,
Bancroft,
Hazelwood, really,
Cummins.
You're not seeing, I'm being flippant now, but you're not seeing names of multicultural throughout that team as much as you probably could. And if I look at grade cricket, there's a huge number of Indian heritage kids, not just Indian, Pakistan, a whole range of them. People, we're not quite there either yet. And we can't.
Exactly, even if you have to look at it, the Sri Lankan team, very few Tamil players. They had the Tamil Sinhala conflict for a long time. Angelo Matthews, Muttaya Muralidharan, all were Tamils. But after that, there's not been much of a Tamil representation if you have to look at it.
Yeah. There's and you go back to your country too. You have elements that go on too in Pakistan. It's probably never going to be fully.
Yeah, but I think we've not had this problem in the cricketing thing. Maybe in society and political things, we had a problem. But as far as representation is concerned, you'll have to dig really, really, really deep to find out any kind of discrimination is there in the Indian team when it comes to selection. I think the talent pool is such that half of the guys won't even get a chance because you can only play 11 players. You can't play 22 players in the team. So that's the thing. Pakistan, even Bangladesh, there is a problem with representation. Even with Pakistan, there is a problem with Hindu representation. West Indies, maybe not. Maybe the islands might have a thing. Oh, why is there not much representation from Guyana? Why is there no representation from the Windward Islands? The Leeward Islands.
They've got it even harder because they're not just different islands; they're different countries.
32 countries make up the West Indies. 32 countries.
I don't think the world of cricket really, really understands the complexity of West Indian cricket selection. The league with the Windward Islands, there's another section of island categories as well. I had Merv Richards explain to me the other day, and it was confusing. And then on top of that, like even where the so-called West Indies Cricket Board is based in Barbados, is based in Antigua. They fight like cats and dogs as well.
Indeed.
You got in Barbados, you had the stronghold of Joel Garner and his hub, but Antigua seems to have taken on a hub there now as well, and I don't quite know why that is, but it's good though. I rather like Antigua.
I guess Antigua is primarily because of Sir Viv.
He doesn't take a very active role though. I don't think, but Richie Richards he's a magnificent match referee. He's a great guy too, by the way. I don't like to say one island's better than the other, but they're very substantial forces, I tell you. Even Jamaica, look at the way they handle most sports in the world. They lead the way in athletics. Yeah, it's an interesting little dilemma there, actually. Okay. Harbhajan Singh was a character. There's no doubt about it. And he was a fighting spirit. And he gave it to Simons. Argue he may have said the wrong thing, but he had the guts to have a go at him. There's more of that going on, I think. Harbhajan Singh, I love him.
He was not scared. When he first even made his debut, he took on Ricky Ponting, for crying out loud. Who takes on Ponting? Even they were young, both were hot-headed, but they still took him on. That showed that Harbhajan had guts. He was not scared. A typical Punjabi, not scared. Absolutely brave.
Yeah, a warrior.
That's how he
is a warrior.
Yeah. So he did sledge them back. He gave it back to them. But again, I had a problem with the sledging aspect for one thing. They would always say, let us not cross the line. It was always said, what stays on the field remains on the field. That worked well in rugby for the Wallabies. It worked well for them in rugby. But I think it didn't work for them in cricket. Where was the line? What do you define the line?
Yeah.
That line evaporated in Sydney, unfortunately, 2008. Since then, they have not been the same. Occasional flashes of brilliance, but since then, not been the same.
Now, yeah, look, it just excites me more and more. I didn't think I could get more excited about Test cricket. I thought I always would reminisce to the days of Lillian Thompson, or reminisce of, say, Shane Warne, or eras like that. I've always thought, or even a Dhoni or a Tendulkar with India. You'd think you would reminisce, but you know what? There's a lot of excitement into the future. If you talk to, and this is not, people often don't believe me this when I say this, but you look at the way that Rishabh Pant is approached in Australia. I don't think you even understand, Siddharth, because you're not here. You haven't experienced. If I walk down the street and talk about India and cricket, first name that comes out is Pant. Yep. Young kids, Rishabh Pant. And Washington Sundar is a different kettle of fish, but he's also mentioned. But Rishabh Pant, no one talks about him as Dhoni. No,
which means he's done a great job then. He's done a great job.
It's just, what I'm saying to you is, MS Dhoni was a champion while he was playing. There's no doubt he still has a great legacy. But the current crop of people watching cricket, they're all saying Rishabh Pant. And people are thinking, hang on a minute, we've got other players. Yeah, you may have, but he has left an indelible mark on Australia. The way that he played in that last match has left a severe mark on Australia in a good way. There's this idolising of Rishabh Pant. If he continues to play on that trajectory, he will go down as monumentally big. And I don't think we realise how big. We're all saying, oh, it's too early. Well, it is. But he's something about him already. He's showing these signs. And Ganguly said it himself as well. I'm actually going to go back out in the streets again in the next couple of days and just get a Rishabh Pant reaction. I won't even have to prompt it. I'll just say, okay, who comes to mind when you talk about Indian cricket? And I'll talk about it. And it's really, I think it's more people. I get comments all the time saying, "Are you sure? Is it really happening? Are you telling them to answer that?" No, I don't need to. They're coming out with it with a great deal of certainty, and I almost wish there's another series of India in Australia again. Well, in fact, when does India come back to Australia again?
2024-25.
Like a test series.
Yeah, 4 test series. Yeah, 3 years, 3-4 years, a normal cycle.
Yeah, so 24-25. So that's, it's not 23-24, it's 24-25.
24-25, yep.
Well, that's 4 years then.
Australia will come to India in 22-23. Because they haven't been to India for close to 6 years now. They last came in 2017. So they'll come in 22-23. Then India will go there to Australia in 24-25.
That'll be exciting.
It will.
I mean, you'll see the transition then from, well, Kohli will probably still be there, but Pant will be more evident. Will Kohli still be there in 24-25? Yeah,
he'll be 35 when that happens. He'll be there. Maybe Rohit might not be there because Rohit will turn 37. So maybe, and it depends how Kohli nurses his long-term injury. How he nurses it will be good. Depending on that, he will not want to miss an Australia tour. Definitely not. There's too much of rivalry and pride at stake for anybody to miss a series against Australia.
Well, that's 24-25, you're saying. Okay, if that's the case, you're going to be here. Okay.
I sincerely pray. I have got the gods lying just in front of me. I just pray to them every day that I make it to Australia. A 35-year dream will get fulfilled for me.
Well, no, just make it happen. Just put up on the wall somewhere in your home those dates and just work your mind towards that, and it'll happen.
I mean, 2022 World T20 is my first foray that I have to come to Australia. 2022, the World T20. After that, a test series would be the icing on the cake for me.
So 2022, when is that going to be? September, October?
October, November, in that period, October, November.
And that's a World Cup T20.
World T20, yep. And we'll have no problem with the venues because Australia is largely COVID-free. So you need not worry about that.
So it's like 15 months, 16 months away. They're about 16 months away.
Yep.
I hate to say this, but I wouldn't hang your hat on media being allowed to travel by that stage.
Oh, damn. Okay.
I really would
That's
be.
great.
You have to get your act together pretty damn quickly for that to be the case, I'm afraid. In the world's, I'm
Oh,
talking about
damn.
Australia allowing you to come into us. It'll be. I think we're going to get. It looks like we're going to get tougher, meaning that we're going to be sending people to Darwin rather than sitting on Melbourne. It looks as though we're heading down that track, which means unless you've got a lot of time to spend, a lot of money to come here, and the quarantining will still exist. I think it'll be 2024.
Hope
Well,
so.
that I mean, yeah, I'd say 2024 is your more likely date that you'll have a date which will set. You can set your clock to, so to speak. All right, now I'm going to this match now. This is still 11 o'clock start, isn't it? You got to go, do you,
Yep.
Siddharth?
Yeah, I have a meeting, unfortunately.
When's that?
Lot of meetings at in the next 2 minutes.
Okay, just quickly on today's selections. Just let's get to that point now. So, Bolt in, Williamson out.
Bolton, yes.
Will
Yeah,
Young
that's Latham to
Santner
lead.
out.
So that's also a bowling conundrum. Remember, we discussed the bowling. How will we slot all of them in? Well, Bolt in, Santner out. I just hope that the likes of Jameson don't get so fatigued when they come for the Southampton test, because Jameson's been playing the IPL. He's also played the Lord's test. He'll play this, plus he'll play that. Let's hope he stays fit.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if he's not. So just quickly, the New Zealand side will be Latham with Conway, Will Young. Then the batting order stays the same.
Oh no! Oh no! BJ Watling out.
Is that fact?
Watling out. Yes, Watling suffered a back injury. He's out for this test.
Right. So does that mean that we bring Conway?
Tom Blundell.
Sorry.
Blundell in. Tom Blundell in.
That's okay because he's a keeper and a batter, so that's not a loss.
Yeah. Oh, no Watling. Damn.
It could bizarrely strengthen the well. You'd say Williamson's a loss, but Will Young's in good form and Blundell's a good batter, so they're a better. They've got
depth. They've got depth.
They have got depth. Are they psychologically not that keen on this match? Are they leaving it alone a bit? Are they not as all there? Williamson's not.
I think it will be foolish. I think it'll be foolish if they don't keep their mind in this, because great teams or even good teams, they don't let their intensity dip for any kind of a match.
No,
I mean, right. An example of Australia, if it's 4-0 against England in the heading into the fifth test, they'll not say, "Oh, let's just take it calmly." They will go for the final. They will go for that. If New Zealand don't focus that hard on the Edgbaston test, I'm sorry, you lost all momentum heading into Southampton. They have to focus it well. They have to play like it is a match and ensure they don't lose a series in England. Then they'll be on an even keel for the test. For the World Test Championship.
All right, your last thoughts just quickly on Tom Latham as a captain. What's your views? This is quick figures.
Latham's a good captain. I mean, he helped New Zealand whitewash India in that ODIs. In the tests, it will be a different cup of tea altogether, but solid captain, good head on his shoulders. He's got depth. I think New Zealand will do well, provided they bat well.
So Watling, is that it for Watling? He's no longer going to play Test cricket. Is that? Oh, sorry, the World Test Championship.
World Test Championship. That's it.
So this injury he's got is not any more than going to keep him out of this match. Is what they're saying?
Yeah, I mean, I guess everybody will want to be fit for the World Test Championship because Williamson's got a slight niggle, but he wants to be fit for the final.
Well, that tells me that they're taking a bit of pressure off this match.
Yeah. But I just hope that the depth manages very well without them.
Well, it's Will Young's big opportunity to show himself. Yep. It's even Blundell's chance to re-establish himself. And obviously, Devon Conway will keep going the way he is. Matt Henry isn't a chance because they'll keep the same bowling line, which is add Bolt in. Santner was pretty ineffective in the previous match anyway. Yeah. I don't rate him as a test player, to be honest with you. I don't know. He's not a bad one-day player, but I don't rate him as a test player.
But Santner's got a decent record in tests. I mean,
yes,
if the pitch is a bit dry, then maybe he might have a chance in it.
You can't beat the old, what was his name? Who was the famous left arm spinner who got a lot of wickets. I forgot his name.
Vittori.
Of course, Vittori. He still he had a lot of fight in him. All right, how are you going with time now? Are you needing to go?
Got to go.
All right, Siddharth. Please consider doing this every day at some stage if you've got time.
Yep.
If you can squeeze your meetings in, even if it's for 20 minutes, half an hour, it's better than nothing. All right.
Fantastic. I will.
All right, Siddharth.
Happy birthday once again, Norman. Happy birthday.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ciao.
All right. Ciao. Yeah. It's good having Siddharth there. His point of view is amazing. I'm just checking on other people that are turning up. I'm getting happy birthdays more than not. Well, in a matter of some 15, 14 minutes, we will start to hear results of the so-called toss, the team selection, which we've talked about already, and any tantrums that might be there. I don't think there'll be any tantrums. But the fact is, we've heard from Siddharth just then, as you heard with me then, the New Zealand team are already without Kane Williamson, not only as the player, but also as captain, replaced as captain by Tom Latham, replaced as a player with Will Young. And that's not a loss in terms of batting because Will Young's been playing very, very well in the so-called tournaments that exist, the so-called county competition. He's been particularly embracing his play, and he's a real little star, we're hearing. So I'm very excited about seeing Will Young play. I think we slot straight into the first drop. And that would mean that Latham will open with Conway, dynamic duo as they are. Will Young at first drop with Ross Taylor again slotting into second drop. Then Henry Nicholls in there at third drop, batting number 5. And then you've got probably, as we heard then, the BJ Watling is not playing this match. He'll play his swan song, his last test match in the World Test Championship. So in comes, of course, that we've had Watling down as the keeper, but we'll have in Tom Blundell. Blundell probably will keep as well. I don't think Conway will keep. So again, Latham, Conway, then we got Will Young, Ross Taylor, Henry Nicholls, Tom Blundell. So that's your top 6. Then de Grand home probably at 7. Then you've got the four bowlers, Southey and Bolt, Wagner and Jameson. There's your 11. That will be likely to be the New Zealand lineup, but I think unlikely to be. We'll confirm in a minute whether there's been any changes there, but at this point there is no reason not to believe that to be the match. So England, a bit slightly different story. They haven't got a World Test Championship to play next. India do, and India obviously be waiting at Southampton. Aegis Bowl, Rose Bowl as it's called. Their batting lineup, you would think, won't change. Rory Burns and Sibley both scored runs in their first and second innings respectively, and they'll open. And I'm pretty sure you'll find that Zach Crawley, who really is a gun player, and I'm wanting to see him do well because he is a good player, will be at first drop. Then you follow that by Joe Root. Then, of course, we had in after that. Well, Ben Stokes is obviously still not available. They got Dan Lawrence there after that. Oh, I'm not impressed with Dan Lawrence. I don't think he really is playing well enough. And Ollie Pope, they're both going to be, you argue they may still be in the side. So you'll have, again, Burns and Sibley, Crawley, Root, Pope, and Lawrence, followed by, a person who didn't bat that well, didn't get an opportunity to bat. But James Bracey's certainly getting a lot of credit. Well, we won't be seeing the departed, as we had before. There maybe Overton might come in. You might argue that Overton might come, or Sam Billings may come in. I'm not sure. Will they bring in Zach? Or will they bring in Leach and or Bess? Well, they're obviously going to then keep Broad Anderson, you would think, with Mark Wood in their bowling lineup. They'll probably won't change. So I don't think England will change too much in their batting lineup either. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. It looks like England are more unchanged than certainly New Zealand are, with having lost Williamson, Watling, and Santner. But they've got the great replacements of Bolt, obviously Will Young and Blundell and their replacements. That's probably the nucleus of the sides at this point in time. It's now 20 past. We've got still 10 minutes to go. A bit about Virat Kohli. Now, Virat Kohli, some people have been asking about Virat Kohli and the June 18th World Test Championship. And obviously he's captain. As I've said earlier, and I'm going to repeat myself a bit here, but the batting lineup of India is obviously a very good one. A proven test lineup. That is Sharma, Gill, Pujara, Kohli, Rahane, and Punt, with perhaps Vihari floating around in that order. The only problem is that Pujara certainly can perform well in that first drop position. But the likes of Gill, Rohit Sharma, Ajinkya Rahane, and obviously Virat Kohli are four batters that actually play the ball too well, meaning they get more bat on ball than most. And if you're in a situation where there's a potential of an edge on a swinging or cutting wicket, they're likely to get it because they certainly are. How would you describe? They're more likely to get the edge of the ball when that situation occurs. So that'll be the situation there. You're likely to have those four batters in the nets practicing very heavily at letting the ball go, deliberately letting the ball go like Pujara does very well, and picking the ball, making the bowler bowl to the batter. And that's where Broad and Anderson are particularly good at trying to get you to not do that and get you to drag you sort of out of your comfort zone and actually play the ball that's moving away when you should be letting it go. If you play the right line, you can keep them at bay pretty well. And we have a promotion of, obviously, of the World Test Championships through Sri Harsha Cricket, which is a magnificent platform. My platform, you've got even other platforms floating around. Even that cricket guy's pretty good at doing what he does. In fact, Rest Subban, he was meant to be on today. So that gives you an option to. We are gearing too much probably towards that match, just a little bit, understandably for India's sake. But New Zealand have to be able to take note of today's match. It's 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th. So effectively a 5-day test match, finishing on the 14th. And that's leaving some 15, 16, 3 days gap and then restarting on the 18th, where they'll be playing the match on a Friday in Southampton. A slightly longer drive than Lord's was from the ground as well. Yeah, and Munchie's saying he thinks Bolt's playing. I'm pretty certain that Bolt's playing. There's been a bit of discussion. There was an article about Ian Chappell regarding Joe Root being pretty unimaginative in his captaincy, and it's really convincing. And it's probably a fair point because you would argue England could have given it a bit of a shake at the end there and got that 275 or whatever it was, and they took a pedal off and simply batted very controlled and very well, but they didn't exactly terrorise the New Zealand attack to try and get those runs. And Ian Chappell knocked that. And I would say that Phillips gave the opportunity to win, and they should have went for it. Would have made it more interesting. So to England's detriment because it's given New Zealand an opportunity here. Well, they've not lost on this opportunity, put it that way. They gave every chance that game to be a win. They could have batted longer and made it a draw earlier, but they didn't. So there are people who, likes of Anderson and Broad, who may have had more of a go than Joe Root. They're more senior than Joe Root in terms of experience of games, but he is the captain. And no one's doubting Chappelli as Ian Chappell's ability to read a game, but that was a decision Joe Root made, and we're going to live with it. So Munchie's saying that Bolt's being interviewed by Sky, and it's not a shock to myself that Bolt wouldn't want to have a go and get a few cobwebs out before the World Cup. So let's have a look here what other commentary we've got going on. Hey, yeah, so BJ Watling was ruled out, as we heard earlier. He hasn't recovered from his sore back. Blunder will replace him, and also with the gloves. In case you haven't heard, there's been a fair bit of discussion there about those changes, as in Watling being replaced by Blundell, Santner, Bolt, and in the case of Williamson for Will Young. By no means are there any concern about those selections. New Zealand will be still strong, but there will be a bit of an edge. I mean, without Kane Williamson, there's a bit of an edge taken away. BJ Watling is by far the best keeper batter for New Zealand, and Stephen a pity that his last Test match is the next one. So the likes of Blundell, Conway are all going to be starting to flex their muscles to keep. And looks like Blundell may be the obvious first star for that, and they've got Conway there as a backup. Pretty good situation. New Zealand have never lacked keepers. Going back to the days of McCullum, they're not under Watling. They had them both on the side when they could have aptly kept between them, and Watling ended up keeping, and McCullum became more the captain and batter, which he did a very good job at, by the way, too. So, yeah, that's the way. And I think the toss is going to be, it's in Birmingham. Edgbaston is in Birmingham, in England. It's slightly it's further north than where we are at Lords. So the New Zealand team's gone further away from the Lords base, whereas Lords was somewhat closer, certainly to Southampton. So they've gone north rather than south. They'll eventually go south. It's all in a driving distance anyway. Won't hurt them too much. And the weather's good, as we heard. Hopefully dry, Munchie was saying. So yeah, I think that there's... And actually, Blundell's a bloody good player. He has played very admirably for the whole thing. So Arun Singer says that Bolt will take 5 wickets. Well, let's hope he does. Southie certainly did the last miss. He took 6, in fact. The Terence Aldrin saying the umpiring of pitches are good in England. Well, you'd argue that it's certainly fair. I would agree with that. Certainly everything is in the favour of that situation. I'm more concerned about how much we're overdoing the rotation, but it looks like rotation is somewhat to the back burner now because there are enough true injuries to warrant people not being selected or soreness, as we know. And let's go through some of the injuries that we've got around at the moment. Sharmy had a broken arm, he's back. Jofra Archer's out with an chronic elbow injury. Ben Stokes had his injury woes. Wokes had some injury woes. Then you go to even Sam Curran. Then you look at a whole string of other players that have played for New Zealand of late that had, well, again, I'm talking about strength, meaning Williamson, Santner, and even now, William Bolt, although he may well have been fit, he was carrying a bit of a tiredness cloud, that's for sure. So it's going to be interesting to see how that happens indeed. I don't think there's going to be any issue with the mental state. They're going to be extremely excited. And I can't state clearly enough how important the World Test Championship is. It is the pinnacle of ICC events now. It should be taken that way, above, you would argue, the 50 over and 20 over versions. It's a world final, effectively a World Cup of sorts. England are there when thereabouts, but they didn't make it. England are thereabouts, that they didn't make it. Yes, Australia are thereabouts, they didn't make it. It was India and New Zealand. So England and Australia have dominated the World Cups for some time. India had a certain phase where they were certainly there. New Zealand have always been up there, but they haven't won. So this is going to be a breakthrough moment if New Zealand win it. And you would argue an era commencing moment for India. Because it'd be nice to say that they would have the World Test Championship. The next, where they should be, even you would argue, more dominant with the players that are coming through in the junior ranks. England may have a chance of being as good. New Zealand somewhat so, but Australia at this stage not. So I think we're a long way from being able to say that. So there's any updates now. We've got about a minute away from the toss. Match yet to begin. The toss is only a short distance away. Let's have a look. Let's have a look. The toss can only be a matter of about a minute away. But it's good to go back and have a look at the bowling of not so much Broad, but more Anderson and his skills over the period of time. Absolutely amazing. I mean, just phenomenal in terms of. And Munchie's talking about the track. The track looks good with a bit of grass. Sounds like a true batting wicket to me. Bowlers by some early assistance for the first half an hour. Once they settle and get through that stage, you'll have a tremendous ability to bat well first. I think the winning of the toss will again demand that they bat. Whoever wins the toss should bat first. So that's, to me, what we'll see here. I would argue that the team batting first will be in the box seat. I mean, New Zealand batted first, and certainly when the box seat, they batted very well. Devon Conway got a massive double 100. England didn't do as well in their first inning, although they batted reasonably. It was still 100 runs behind. New Zealand were in a position to go for a significant lead. And then that meant that England were on the back foot somewhat. I think England were given the opportunity, a little sniff to have a chance to win, and they didn't take it, which is negative. And Ian Chappell's right. Hamidshu Chowdhury has just said to me that Latham said Kane will play in the final. Well, I'm not surprised by that. Of course, and I'd say that you'll also see, well, you'd think that Santner will be available, and certainly Watling will be available, and they have been held back, which does mean there's an element of lesser importance placed in this match. In a way, you have to say that. It's not very nice thing to say, but there's 3 of your main players being rested due to niggling injuries, meaning they probably could have played, but they decided not to. It was a bit of a dampener, a little bit of a dampener. So the overhead conditions will make batting first tricky early on because it's a bit cloudy. Yes, as any first hour of the day's play is tricky, and if you get through that and you negotiate that, then the team will then be in an ascendancy situation for the rest of the innings, and you would think they'll get a good total of 350 plus. Whether it's 450, we'll wait and see, but I think 350 will be the order of the day of this match. If you're getting 350, you're putting yourself in a pretty unassailable situation, let's be honest. It's very unlikely you're going to be in a losing situation if you're that far ahead by any stretch of the imagination. So let's have a look. Okay, we have the sides given here, and it looks like I'll read out the sides for you. England have got Rory Burns, Dom Sibley as opener, Zach Crawley, Joe Root captain, Ollie Pope, Dan Lawrence, James Bracey, Mark Wood, Ollie Stone is in the side. Broad and Anderson are there. So Ollie Stone has been brought in to replace. Let's have a look at the stories in terms of Ollie Stone has gone. He's definitely been included. Mark Wood's there as well. So who was the other bowler? Of course, it was our friend who was dropped based on his on his discretion there. My name is to lose me now. What was the name of the fellow again? Yeah, Ollie Stone's come in as his replacement. So that's the story. Let me just confirm that we've got what's going on here. So in the first test match, and I'll just go back a bit. Yeah, so Ollie Stone's been brought in has come in as a replacement. New Zealand, Latham, Conway is expected. Will Young, Ross Taylor, Henry Nichols, Tom Blundell's keeper. Daryl Mitchell is in there. So Wagner, Henry, Arjas, Patel, and Bolt. There's been quite a few changes, actually. So Southey has also been rested. And we know that Mitchell Santner has been left out. So Daryl Mitchell joins the team, and Matt Henry comes in for Southey, and Arjas Patel as well. So there have been some number of changes there. So that's more significant. I'll go through again. New Zealand's team is Tom Latham, Devon Conway, Will Young, Ross Taylor, Henry Nichols, Tom Blundell as keeper, James Bracey. Sorry, I'll get this right. Tom Blundell, Daryl Mitchell's come in, Neil Wagner and Matt Henry, Ajaz Patel and Trent Bolt. So yes, it certainly is the fact is that we've got quite a few changes there. Has it lessened the New Zealand side? Well, somewhat with Williamson, yes, no doubt. England again, Rory Burns, Sibley, Zach Crawley, Root, Ollie Pope, Lawrence, same batting order. Bracey, Wood, all the same. Broad and Anderson, the same. Only Ollie Stone has come in for obvious reasons. So that's a pretty strong side from England's perspective, and certainly New Zealand. So England have chosen to bat. So England have won the toss and chosen to bat. So England will bat first, which is very much positive for England. So England have won the toss and chosen to bat. And they're batting with that same batting order with the like. So New Zealand will open up with definitely Bolt and probably Matt Henry. And you'll have then the Wagners, Mitchells and Patels coming in to bowl on top of that. So Munchie's going to enjoy that. He needs to shoot off. Ollie Robinson is replacing by Stone. So Ollie Robinson, as I said earlier, was due to his discretions with his Twitterverse or his social media verse, has been replaced by Stone, which is interesting. So again, in the New Zealand side, Jamison's not there, and Southey's not there, as well as Santner. So Santner, Jamieson, and Southey are out. Mitchell, Henry, and AJ Patel come in. Blundell's. In fact, let's just go through how many changes there's been. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 changes to the New Zealand team. 5. Again, Williamson was 1, replaced by Will Young. Watling out, replaced by Blundell. Then you've got Southey and Jamieson replaced by Matt Henry and I think Daryl Mitchell. Then you've got AJ Patel coming in as, again, another player for Jamieson. So, yeah, Jamieson, Southey, and what Santner have been taken out, well, not dropped, certainly, I think all rested in preparation for the World Test Championships. Really, Bolt and Wagner came out probably quite well, and Matt Henry's in there. So this is fair shuffling going on. If 5 players out of the New Zealand side, has it weakened them? You'd have to say yes. England batting first, you'd say it's a positive, with Rory Burns and Sibley both scoring runs in the first Test match. Crawley netting a score. Root, so Ollie Pope and Lawrence certainly in need of runs. Bracey didn't have a real chance to do so. He kept well, though. So they've got a pretty solid performance. Who's going to win this match is the question that I've got for you guys. At this point in time, you'd have to argue, well, I would have said New Zealand would be the favourites to win based on how they played in the first Test match. And they batted first as well, which they didn't know before the toss. So it's slightly more balanced now. You'd argue that England may have a slight advantage because there's been 5 changes to the New Zealand side, which is quite a few. Bolt's a positive. Daryl Mitchell, AJ Patel, and Matt Henry, by no means they're top frontline bowlers, having to bowl first now against the England side, which had a few runs on the board. Hopefully they're bat better. It gives England maybe a slight sense of ascendancy. We've got the Rabbitohs TV people here from, I'm not sure whether it's Steve Maven or it's Darren Brown has joined us. But yeah, the reality is that the sides that we have on paper now, New Zealand have taken 5 players out. For want of a better word, have rested their 5 players. Williamson's rested. Watling rested. Jamieson and, of course, Southey rested. And Santner rested. So it really doesn't leave much in the way of... it almost seems like they're playing the reserve grade team. I hate to say that, but it's somewhat like that because, in fact, there's been 6 changes. I'm trying to work out that 6 changes. So Young, Blundell, Mitchell, Henry, Patel, and Bolt have come in. Okay, so of course, and yeah, there's been 6. I'll go through them again. Young for Williamson. Blundell's come in for Watling. That's 2. You've got Mitchell, Henry, Patel, and Bolt come in for a combination of Southey, Jamieson, Santner. I'm thinking the last person is there who was not included. Just trying to work out who that other person is that was not included. Well, Bolt came in for, obviously, for Santner, but the other 2 for Southey and Jamieson. Neil Henry's still a consistent player between them, so I don't think you can actually say there's been 2, 4, 5. Yeah, okay, there's been 6. All right. Quite more than 5. It's in fact 6 that have been replaced or changed based on resting players. So let's hope they all play well for the World Test Championship because they're not playing today. New Zealand have been weakened. You'd say England are in the ascendancy. They've won the toss and they're electing to bat. So that will, again, you would argue, them more in their favour. They've talked here about the reality is that they actually have used all 17 players on their Test lineup, a squad that is, to play in these 2 matches, which is quite interesting. It's not just the 11 players, but the further 6 means they've used the full 17. So there's quite a few. Well, again, it's not an issue. You'd almost argue these 2 matches are, although they are standalone true Test matches, they are in fact warming up for the World Test Championship. To be really honest, which doesn't sound very good, does it? Edgbaston is a great wicket to watch cricket at. Obviously, it is more of a batting paradise depending on the conditions. It is overcast, which will favour the bowlers for the first hour or so. But England will get through them. They're used to these conditions. New Zealand's going to be struggling a little bit with their bowling. Unless Bolt and Wagner really stand up, I think New Zealand will be slightly weakened. Their bowling line, the batting line's, well, virtually the same. But they've lost two significant players in Watling and Williamson. Will Young, I hope he goes well. I really do. I really hope he goes well. He's done so well domestically already in the so-called county circuit. Tom Blundell has done well, only recently scored centuries and played well for his country. So I don't think there's a massive loss. So Tom Blundell's obviously the heir apparent of BJ Watling's position. Will Young's not the heir apparent to anyone at this point. He's not yet in the side. Devon Conway's asserted himself in his opening, and he'll stay there after scoring a double century. And we've got Rabbitohs TV telling me India's to win the World Test Championship. Having watched the video that we put together regarding Australian fan reaction, that was pretty obvious. Some 121,000 people have viewed that, with 7,600 likes and well over 1,000 comments. We certainly have seen a distinct relationship there. So any further questions, guys? I'll repeat one more time in case you didn't hear. Burns, Sibley will open. Zach Crawley, first drop. Root, second. Ollie, Pope and Lawrence still there. They didn't play that well in the first game. Bracey keeping it. Can certainly bat better. Is worthy of watching if he bats well. Wood and Ollie Stone. Pretty impressive in their bowling efforts. Broad and Anderson. So they've really gone over the four-pace, 1, 2, 3, 4 pronged bowling attack. And they'll have Joe Root will probably again be the spinner. No sign of a Leach or a Bess, which would be a bit disappointing. I think they played very well, especially Leach in the series in India, where England played India. It was a particularly promising effort. And yeah, the Rabbitohs are talking about the day at Coogee. We'll be going back to Coogee again. There's another video I'm putting together regarding aspects of the World Test Championship. Watch out for that, guys. It'll be on very soon as well. That will be part of our. I'm also going to the South Rabbitohs match against Newcastle Knights, not the Kolkata Knight Runners, the Newcastle Knights, which is their opposition this Saturday. And I'll tell you about that. The fact that we had the State of Origin, I told them that earlier on. New South Wales, where we had a number of South Sydney players play. Thumped Queensland 50 points to 6 in a very impressive match up in North Queensland. It only happened last night. Being my birthday. In fact, have Steve Maven and Darren Brown actually wished me a happy birthday. I haven't seen any evidence of that, Rabbitohs TV, guys. My birthday today. You should have known that. I haven't seen no. I'm a bit upset with you guys. You have to put on some comments regarding that immediately, please. All right. So, again, the 6 changes will certainly rock. So, New Zealand have used up to their 17 players. Only Sri Lanka with 18 used more in a 2-match series against Bangladesh in 2002. There's a little bit of a tidbit. So this has not happened since 2002 when Sri Lanka used all 18 players in their 2-test series. A 2-test series here, New Zealand have used their full 17. 6 changes. Resting the players. Maybe a few too many rested there, I would argue. But we'll see how that pans out. So AP Gunner saying happy birthday. Thank you, Rabbitohs TV. Who is that for Rabbitohs TV? Own up. Is it Steve Maven or is it Darren Brown or is it someone else? Own up who that Rabbitohs TV person is who didn't know my birthday until I told him, which I'm going to have words with you at the South Newcastle match for that. Very, very poor effort. All right, so in summary, England have won the toss. England have won the toss and elected to bat. Their team is virtually unchanged other than the one change which we talked about earlier, which was around Robinson going out, Stone coming in. New Zealand had 6 changes where everything from their first drop and their actual captaincies changed, with Latham becoming captain, Will Young going in, Blundell going in, Daryl Mitchell going in, Matt Henry, AJ Patel, and Trent Bolt. So there we have our full range of changes. So Steve Maven has opened up. He claims to be the CEO. I wouldn't be putting any money into your company if you're the CEO, by no means. So that's one thing for sure. That's just a warning about CEOs, and I never trust CEOs anyway. Since when is you a CEO, Steve Maven? Okay. Himanshu Chaudhary says, finally, McDermott gets his chance from Australia. Looks great while batting. Yeah. McDermott's Ben McDermott talking about. Yeah, he looks pretty good. Again, Australia's weakened immeasurably in their squads, and I don't know whether they're really anywhere near their best either. I think Australia's some grating circumstances with their selections too. I don't quite understand some of their selections, but they seem a little bit more digging deeper in the well for their players than they would have done previously. So we have that situation. All right. Again, 6 changes to the New Zealand side. England have won the toss and elected to bat. Quite impressive indeed. I've been phoned by people about my birthday. I'm getting a happy birthday from a whole bunch of people here. Even Monty Panesar said that. Here we go. You want to see who says happy birthday to me? There we've got people right there. You've got Monty Panesar, Simon Willis, Gargi Waka, and also Chris Vernon all said happy birthday. I think they must. It's funny how they've got time to say happy birthday on the page, but they're not actually. So they haven't got time to come on air. I would like them to be on there anyway. So Rabbitohs, they're only joking. We are a trio. So you're not the CEO, Steve Maven. So CEO, Darren Brown, and Greg Chappell are all not Greg Chappell. Chappell, he's part of the group as well. Grant Chappell, I think it is. Sorry, my mistake. So Himanshu Chaudhary scored a brilliant match. So who are we talking about here? Himanshu Chaudhary. Someone scored a brilliant match-saving century against India in the practice match at the SCG. You're talking about, well, that was Punt, wasn't it? Who are you talking about? Oh, Ben McDermott. Yes, that's true. He did actually. But then India were all over Australia. That was a token innings. I was at that practice match. It was Australia were being smashed by India, to be honest. And India pulled the pedal off them a little bit. And Ben McDermott, yes, he batted well, but match saving. I think India were in control the whole time of that SCG match. Was with a pink ball too. Punt smashed the Livy Dales out of the bowling, and pretty ominous towards what actually happened towards the end of the series. He showed his form well and truly at that point. So guys, again, I'm going to just introduce you've got Lowell and Hardy, Chris Vernon and Norman Kostek there. You've got an Aussie and a Pom talk all things cricket in India. That's my show with Chris. I think we're episode 14 we've done so far. And then you've got at the Gusto Cafe there in Randwick, which is also one of Coogee, and the Eyes on Cricket with Norman Kostek Cup. That's very, very nice. It's one of some of the merchandising. We've also got my cap, as you can see. There'll be some 5 colours: blue, black, this sort of khaki type colour. You've got a white, and another form of lighter blue as well. Some of the one I'm wearing will be there. And Aaron Hub Sharma saying hello. That's nice of you guys. So we've got about 12 minutes before the match is starting. We know the teams now. We know that England are going to win the toss and batting, which puts them in ascendancy. England should win this test match. Being at Edgbaston, the ground that they're very much home of their wins. They don't often win at Lords, especially against Australia. Australia's got a great record against England at Lords. At Edgbaston, England tend to do a bit better their wins. New Zealand are severely depleted by some 6 players. And there's questions about, can I understand why Matt Henry was playing out of Kyle Jamieson? I agree. Unless they're truly injured, if they're being rested, it's too limp or wimpy to be. I'm a bit annoyed how many players have been rested, actually. If Sandner had a genuine injury, Williams had a genuine injury, I get it. And if Latham had Watling had a sore back, I get those 3. But Southey, Jamieson, basically, there was no mention of them being injured in any way, shape, or form. So they've just been rested. So it does take a bit of sting out of this match, a little bit, because that's a much better bowling attack. They've got a substantially weakened bowling attack, I have to argue. Matt Henry's not a bad bowler. Ajaz Patel and Darren Bletchell, they're not renowned at this point at all. So, yeah, Will Young's capable. Blundell's not a bad attack. So their weakened bowling attack will suit England send their batting first. There we are. We're in a situation where England have probably gained a bit of ascendancy now in this match and look to be, you'd argue, favourites. They've put themselves ahead in this match in terms of the expectation of where they're going to finish. So I would argue that's what we're looking at here. So Langer said that Meredith could make the debut in Ashes. Riley Meredith, oh geez, his accuracy leaves a lot to be desired at this point. Yeah, well, Rabbitohs TV, yes, Southey's being obviously rested. We knew that. Well, somewhat we knew that, but Jamison's been rested as well. And then you've got Sandner, Sandner Sandler, Watling, and Williamson were meant to be out because of a true injury, soreness, or weakness. They were out for that reason. But then both Jamison and Southey, I think they've gone a bit too far there, to be honest. It's a test match. It's not a practice match. It's a test match, which counts. So there's not a rotation policy going on here. So I would argue that's a bit too much. They've taken the emphasis off this match. That's my opinion. They gave every chance. New Zealand played the first test match very well. They went about it, and now they declared early, gave England ample time to have a go at it, win or possibly lose. So the reality is that was well done by New Zealand. The first match, but they've gone the other way around here. They've gone a bit too far, I would argue, with their selections this time. So there's an element of, I'd say a bit of disappointment there for this. So I would have liked them to actually have their better side for this match, given it a good. So is it James Anderson's last test? No, I don't think so. There's 5 test matches to come against India coming. He won't be missing that. And then there's the Ashes. And he's likely to play both the 5 test matches against India, then play the Ashes series in Australia, and then end up playing again in England next summer. And then probably then he may be closer to, I think, pulling up his side, or at least taking his last stand and bowling. And will probably play in a swan song series back at home in 12 months' time. So he's probably got, 10, 12, 13, 14 test matches to play before that happens. He's got a fair bit to go, actually. Deverage backs his hit. Ben McDermott is best suited for Aussie middle order. Well, he may well be, but they're sadly lacking at the moment. If he's the answer, well, I don't know whether he's the answer just yet. I don't know where you're getting this confidence from. The game that practice match was India were all over Australia like a rash. And although they did end up batting okay, I think India took the foot off the pedal by that stage and absolutely they could have nailed them. They didn't do it. So that's more the case, I think, in that situation. All right, so we'll end here now by saying England have won the toss and have elected to bat. The tantrum I've got is that New Zealand have put their best team on the field. They've had some 6 changes. The England side, having won the toss and elected to bat, will have Rory Burns and Dom Sibley there opening up. Zach Crawley in at first with Joe Root at second. Ollie Pope, Lawrence Hill, dubious still at the next 2 positions with Bracey at 7. Mark Wood, Ollie Stone in place of Robinson, and Broad and Anderson together again. New Zealand, when they get the opportunity to bat, will come in with their newly appointed captain for this match, Tom Latham. Devon Conway will bat with him. Will Young will be first drop. Ross Taylor, Henry Nichols, Tom Blundell as keeper in place of Watling. Then the bowling lineup with Mitchell, Wagner, Henry, Ajaz Patel, and Trent Bolt. So there we go, guys. Well, we can move over now and watch the match, which is starting in some 6-7 minutes' time. And I hope you all will enjoy that. You'll find that match will be, I still think it's very interesting. I like to see the batters do well this time, which they probably didn't have as much of a chance. The first match, we know that Conway scored a double century, and the impressive batting of Rory Burns with his 132 were the 2 players that held up their teams quite nicely. And Sibley coming in the end there in that 4th innings and staving off, which was never going to be a win to, either side of the end. So it was a draw. So it seems like that it certainly is. There is no spinner for England. Interesting, yet again. Well, except for Root, of course. All right, guys, we're going to leave it at that. This is Norman Koshnik signing off on my birthday. I'm going to go out and enjoy myself now. So make sure you view, like, and share the posts. Subscribe. If you're watching this particular show and you haven't subscribed, just go and subscribe, would you please? Just hit the subscribe button and leave in the notification buttons for our next discussion. We will be together tomorrow at the same time of 1:30 p.m. Indian time, 6 p.m. Australian time, to talk about day 2 in review and day 1 in review and day 2 as a preview. So all the best, guys. Thank you for joining me today, and we'll talk tomorrow at the same time. Thank you. Any feedback, send it through. This is Norman Koshnik saying goodbye with 5 minutes to go before the match. Enjoy the match. I'm getting quickly asked a question. Your favourite team in the final? I think I've said it before. My heart says India. My head says New Zealand. But it could reverse. Heart India, head New Zealand. I'm thinking New Zealand will be hard to beat, but India, all or nothing attitude, could well win. Let's hope, for the sake of cricket, the best team wins. But either side of that mind, I am supporting India, but New Zealand got a great chance. All right, and there's no other questions. Well, there's also yes, how much your Chowdhury's. I always love asking me last minute questions. We are looking at, or Riley Meredith is 145 to 150 kilometres per hour. Yes, but he's inaccurate as anything at the moment. He's still raw. He's still away from being selected. There is a test match between South Africa and West Indies happening too. And the question at Siraj or Shami, well, they're probably both going to be in the side. And it should be favourite for the final. Yeah, you would argue that's pretty much the way it will pan out. All right. I've got to go, guys. It's now 4 minutes before the match starts. You've got no reason whatsoever but to watch this match and enjoy it, because you'll be seeing a lot of intel given for the next match, even though 6 of the New Zealand players are not there. All right, guys. You take care now and enjoy that. So we have only some 5 minutes, less than 5 minutes now to play. Here we go. Go and sit down and get a cup of coffee or a cup of tea for that matter, and we'll say goodbye. All the best to you guys. Ciao. Norman Kochnik signing off from Eyes on Cricket with Norman Kochnik. If you like and share the posts, and don't forget to subscribe and let others know through WhatsApp of your enjoyment of this show.